Hello, I am Exalite, and welcome. 4 days ago, I interviewed a man on the phone. I will not disclose his name, and I don't even know if it was his real name. This man claimed to be in his late 30s, and during our interview, he posed a question to me. He asked me if I thought that a home or the land that a home is on can be the driving force for evil. He asked, do I believe that some places are just inherently cursed? Was the home or the land where John Wayne Gacy committed such heinous and brutal murders what drove him to commit those acts, rather than the man himself? The same way that people believe that there are vortexes in the world where water runs uphill and gravity seems to exist on a different plane, can property or homes affect the person who is weak of mind or faith? Someone who can easily be prodded to do the devil's work. What about the Lizzie Borden home, or the land surrounding the gully where the men and women hanged for being witches were killed? Or the La Laurie mansion, which I've written about, in New Orleans, known to be the place where such evil acts has rarely taken place anywhere else in the world. All at the hands of a woman who seemed to be bent on having the pleasure of torturing other human beings, where even now the house is claimed to be haunted. Are there places directly related to hell? He asked, could these places cause someone to be possessed by demons, or what is known as los demonios in Spanish, démon in French, or the upwards of 9 different names used for demon in the differing Native American languages? Is that why houses or land are haunted, or do they, in fact, soak up the events that have happened there, as most ghost hunters would want us to believe? The man was posing this question to me because he claims that a stretch of land along I-45 between Houston and Galveston, Texas, in a city named Texas City, there are 26 acres of land, known as the Texas Killing Fields, where upwards of 40 young girls and women have been found dumped or buried, and many more have disappeared in the area. Could this land have caused him to murder someone? According to his account, he and his friends had gone to the Killing Fields to ghost hunt, expecting the property to be haunted. It's an eerie and deadly sight for sightseers and ghost hunters to wander. He claims that within minutes he was seeing images of a young woman being killed, and he became frightened and wanted to leave. The police believe that there could be several serial killers who dump along this property. One man confessed to some 11 murders when he was 72 years old, but was never convicted, and another man was convicted of just 1 murder, leaving the rest of the cases unsolved. And as this man remembers that night, his buddies began to tease him about being scared. They called him weak, but eventually they gave in to his demands. He said that he felt different, that it was like, and I quote, my insides were all torn up. He was a driver that night, and after he took the other boys home, he went back to the area and sat at a local gas station. And the next day, he watched a young girl walk out of that gas station. He figured that she was maybe 13 or 14 years old, and as she walked down the street, he felt himself start up his car and slowly drive behind her. Eventually, she turned and yelled at him, and she said, "Hey, mister, get along, or I'll tell my daddy about you, you creep." And what he says next was he felt pure rage, like nothing he ever thought he was capable of. He said he pulled up right next to her, leaned over, opened the car door on the passenger side, and told her to get the fuck in. This time he could sense her fear. Almost, he said, as if he could hear her heart beating, see the blood rush through her veins. She started to walk faster. He looked around, and there was no one coming from either direction, so he got out. He grabbed a baseball bat that his friend had left in the trunk, and he dragged that young girl into the ditch, and as he described what he had done, he claimed that it was like looking at himself from afar, that he didn't know that he had that in him, yet there he was, standing in the ditch next to the killing field, responsible for the death of this girl. He said his body knew just where to bury her. And then he told me that for the last decade and a half he's been unsure of who that person was. That as soon as he left the body, he was horrified by what he'd done, that he'd gone home, and that he'd cried for days. He claims that today he's a man of God, a pastor of a small church. He's married with 3 small children, and he prays every day that he'll never be found out. But he knows, he says, that something took hold of him that night. Some evil force entered his mind and his body. And he prays that that is so, and that he really is not capable of murder or the acts he committed. Then he told me that he wants to go back there and see.